into the laws of countries throughout the world. And that can be done by the adoption of covenants and the changing of laws to meet whatever a country has accepted in a covenant, which will be written in treaty form. These things must be well understood, because even though you accept treaties and countries ratify those treaties, the real change which must give to people throughout the world their human rights must come about in the hearts of people. We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms which give them dignity and which will give them a sense that they are human beings that can walk the earth with their heads high and look all men in the face. If we observe these rights for ourselves and for others, I think we will find that it is easier in the world to build peace, because war destroys all human rights and freedoms. So in fighting for those, we fight for peace. I'm very glad to be able to take part in this celebration in St. Louis on Human Rights Day. Ever since the Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was passed in Paris in 1948 on December the 10th, we have fostered this day not only in the United States, but throughout the world. The object is to make people everywhere conscious of the importance of human rights and freedoms. The reason for that is that these are spoken of and emphasized in the Charter of the United Nations. And the Declaration was written to elaborate the rights already mentioned in the Charter, and to emphasize also for all of us the fact that the building of human rights would be one of the foundation stones on which we would build in the world an atmosphere in which peace could grow. For that reason, all over the world, we've encouraged the associations for the United Nations to observe a whole week before United Nations Day comes around to explain United Nations and what goes on in that organization. And when we come to the celebration for human rights, we try to particularly have people study the Declaration so that they will really understand what were considered to be the most essential rights for all people to have throughout the world. They fall into different groups. And one reason that we are now considering the writing of a covenant or covenants is because we feel that these rights should sometimes be actually written into the laws of countries throughout the world. And that can be done by the adoption of covenants and the changing of laws to meet whatever a country has accepted in a covenant, which will be written in treaty form. These things must be well understood, because even though you accept treaties and countries ratify those treaties, the real change which must give to people throughout the world their human rights must come about in the hearts of people. We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms which give them dignity and which will give them a sense that they are human beings that can walk the earth with their heads high and look all men in the face. If we observe these rights for ourselves and for others, I think we will find that it is easier in the world to build peace, because war destroys all human rights and freedoms. So in fighting for those, we fight for peace.
One.
I'm very glad to be able to take part in this celebration in St. Louis on Human Rights Day. Ever since the Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was passed in Paris in 1948 on December the 10th, we have fostered the observance of this day, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. The object is to make people everywhere conscious of the importance of human rights and freedoms. The reason for that is that these are spoken of and emphasized in the Charter of the United Nations. And the Declaration was written to elaborate the rights already mentioned in the Charter, and to emphasize also for all of us the fact that the building of human rights would be one of the foundation stones on which we would build in the world an atmosphere in which peace could grow. For that reason, all over the world, we've encouraged the associations for the United Nations to observe a whole week before United Nations Day comes around to explain United Nations and what goes on in that organization. And when we come to the celebration of human rights, we try to particularly have people study the Declaration so that they will really understand what were considered to be the most essential rights for all people to have throughout the world. They fall into different groups. And one reason that we are now considering the writing of a covenant or covenants, because we feel that these rights should somehow
meaning that not as comfortable or
written into the laws of countries throughout the world. And that can be done by the adoption of covenants and the changing of laws to meet whatever a country has accepted in a covenant, which will be written in treaty form. These things must be well understood, because even though you accept treaties and countries ratify those treaties, they'll change throughout the world. Their human rights must come about in the hearts of people. We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms which give them dignity and which will give them a sense that they are human beings that can walk the earth with their heads high and look all men in the face. If we observe these rights for ourselves and for others, I think we will find that it is easier in the world to build,
Hello?
because war
Hello?
is all human rights and freedoms. So in fighting so, we fight for peace. Celebrate. I'm very glad to be able to take part in this celebration in St. Louis on Human Rights Day.
Okay.
The Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was passed in Paris in 1948 on December the 10th. We have fostered the observance of this day not only in the United States, but throughout the world. The object is to make people everywhere conscious of the importance of human rights and freedoms. The reason for that is that these are spoken of and emphasized in the Charter of the United Nations. And the Declaration was written to elaborate the rights already mentioned in the Charter and to emphasize also for all of us the fact that the building of human rights would be one of the foundation stones on which we would build in the world an atmosphere in which peace could grow. For that reason, all over the world, we've encouraged the associations for the United Nations to observe a whole
Okay. Can you hear me now?
before United Nations
Oh, okay.
Day comes around.
And I'm not seeing,
Place.
you normally see the participants on the screen. Would I not in this case?
And when we come
I'm just seeing me.
celebration for
And then
human,
the agenda's on a small
we try
screen
to
to the right.
particularly have people study the Declaration so that they will really understand
Upper right-hand corner.
we're considered to be the
It
essential
doesn't
right
say
for all people to have
either.
throughout the world. They fall into different
It
groups
says swap shared screen with video.
that we are now
And when I do that, it makes me smaller, and then I have a big version of the
is
agenda.
because we feel that these rights should sometimes be actually written into the laws of countries throughout the world
I'd love to be able to see everyone, especially when I introduce the commissioners.
by the adoption of covenants
I need to go out and come back in.
laws to meet whatever a country has accepted in a covenant which will be written in treaty form. These things must be well understood because even though you accept treaties and countries ratify those treaties, the real change which must give to people throughout the world their human rights must come about in the hearts of people. We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms which give them dignity and which will give them a sense that they are human beings that can walk the earth with their heads high and look all men in the face. If we observe these rights for ourselves and for others, I think we will find that it is easier in the world to build peace, because war destroys all human rights and freedoms. So in fighting for those, we fight for peace.
Good morning, everybody. It's just now 1 o'clock. We're going to wait a few minutes before we jump in, just to give people a little bit more time to
One
log
great
on.
American woman never ceases to study the international scene. The National Broadcasting Company is honored to present a conversation with Eleanor Roosevelt, archetype of the 20th century woman. With Mrs. Roosevelt appears William Atwood.
I'm very glad to be able to take part in this celebration in St. Louis on Human Rights Day. Ever since the Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was passed in Paris in 1948 on December the 10th, we have fostered the observance of this day not only in the United States, but throughout the world. The object is to make people everywhere conscious of the importance of human rights and freedoms. The reason for that is that these are spoken of and emphasized in the Charter of the United Nations. And the Declaration was written to elaborate the rights already mentioned in the Charter and to emphasize also for all of us the fact that the building of human rights would be one of the foundation stones on which we would build in the world an atmosphere in which peace could grow. For that reason, all over the world, we've encouraged the creations for the United Nations to observe a whole week before United Nations Day comes around to explain United Nations and what goes on in that organization. And when we come to the celebration for human rights, we try to particularly have people study the Declaration so that they will really understand what were considered to be the most essential rights for all people to have throughout the world. They fall into different groups. And one reason that we are now considering the writing of a covenant or covenants is because we feel that these rights should sometime be actually written into the laws of countries throughout the world. And that can be done by the adoption of covenants and the changing of laws to meet whatever a country has accepted in a covenant, which will be written in treaty form. These things must be well understood because even though you accept treaties and countries ratify those treaties, the real change which must give to people throughout the world their human rights must come about in the hearts of people. We must want our fellow human beings to have rights and freedoms which give them dignity and which give them a sense that they are human beings that walk the earth with their heads high and look all men in the face. If we observe these rights for ourselves and for others, I think we will find that it is easier in the world to build peace. War destroys all human rights and freedom. So in fighting for those, we fight for peace. And look all men. These rights for ourselves and for others.
One great American woman never ceases to study the international scene.
That you were sent this morning to get back into the meeting. You can also just leave the meeting open if you'd like. See you back
So
here.
fighting for those, we fight for peace. And look all men. Right? For ourselves and for others.
One great American woman never ceases to study the international scene.
So before we get started, we just want to remind everyone to mute your computers throughout the program. There will be a point where we can drop questions in the chat, and then we'll be able to respond to those. But for the duration, we just ask that people mute themselves so that we can proceed. With that, good afternoon, everyone. I am Terrence Sullivan, the Executive Director here at the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. First, I'd like to thank you all for joining us as we welcome you to our virtual celebration of International Human Rights Day. I would be remiss if I did not start by stating the obvious, that we do wish we could do this in person, and we hope that this time next year, we'll be able to join one another in true fellowship and discuss the important topic of human rights and its importance at both the local and international level. Human rights, now more than ever, are in need of protection. As the world becomes more global and interconnectedness continues to grow, we must be mindful of one another and appreciate and respect the rights as well as humans, as well as the rights we justly and humans deserve. President Kennedy believed and stated that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. And this holds true for each person on this call, and especially here at the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. As a little bit of background, on March 21st of 1960, Kentucky's then Governor Burt Combs signed a bill creating the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. 6 years later, in 1966, Kentucky became the first Southern state to pass its own Civil Rights Act. At that time, Dr. Martin Luther King stated that this is a milestone for any Southern state, and indeed a great step forward for any state. The Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, or the Commission, is the exclusive state administrative authority charged with the enforcement of the Kentucky Civil Rights Act and is empowered under Kentucky Revised Statutes, Chapter 344. Our agency is tasked in Kentucky law with safeguarding all individuals within the state from discrimination, and our mission is to eradicate in the Commonwealth of Kentucky through enforcement of our enabling statute, the Kentucky Civil Rights Act. Our agency has multiple departments to do this work. At the forefront, however, are those directly included in hearing and investigating complaints of investigation. Up front, we have an intake unit led by Mary Ann Taylor, who takes those initial complaints, be it from a phone call, email, online inquiry, hopefully soon text message. And during non-COVID times, people are also able to walk into our office in downtown Louisville to file a complaint. Intake reviews the complaint to determine jurisdiction and reaches back out to the complainant to get pertinent information to begin an official charge of discrimination. Complaints with jurisdiction with our office are assigned to an investigator within our enforcement unit led by Aaron Spalding. Enforcement does the full investigation and has the ability to request and access documents and interviews. At the conclusion of an investigation, the investigator presents their findings to myself and our legal unit to make a probable cause determination. If the legal unit believes there's probable cause to issue a formal charge, an attorney then takes the case and prosecutes it in either an administrative hearing or through the court system. Throughout the process, mediation can also be requested by the parties. Further, part of our process allows for parties to reach an agreement that's public in the form of a conciliation agreement. Conciliation agreements are vital. They allow for the inclusion of training that may be geared at preventing this issue in the future. This is important for our office because we have a team, our education and outreach team, that's tasked with doing just that. We operate on a state level. We take complaints of discrimination from complainants across our 4.4 million people in Kentucky. For a smaller state agency, that's the tall task. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Kentucky is a very large state. While it sits around 41,000 square miles, it's a very long state from east to west with 120 counties. A drive from the easternmost point of the western regions to the from the easternmost point to the western regions is a drive of around 9 hours. That's a lot of ground to cover for an agency, especially at our current size and staffing levels. Thankfully, another part of our ability and powers under 344 allows us to establish and empower local commissions. All of this is vital in ensuring rights are protected for all who reside in this state. The globalization I mentioned earlier means that not only are we tasked with protecting the rights of our own, but being cognizant of the threats to our rights that are developing externally. As views are more freely expressed and seldomly checked, there's been a statistical rise in attacks on the civil rights of others through open and notorious discrimination. We, as an agency focused on the rights of all and as champions for the protections of rights and humanity, must hold steadfast in our unrelenting resolve to be the independent and dedicated protector in Kentucky. But that also means we need your help. Every person on this call has expressed by their very presence here today a commitment to the rights of others, and for that we thank you. This is indeed a team effort, and by the looks of it on this call, I really like the team we've assembled. With that, I wanted to pass this off to our board chair, Alma Randolph, to get us started, but I wanted to repeat, thank you. Thank you for joining us in this mission and for being our partners in this work. Your commitment to humanity is of the utmost importance. And as Nelson Mandela once proclaimed, denial of a person's human rights is a challenge to their very humanity. So I wanted to thank you all for valuing human rights, but also placing a high value on humanity. Chair Randolph.
Hello. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's my privilege to take this opportunity to introduce our Board of Commissioners. We are appointed by the governor to represent each Supreme Court district. 4 represent the state at large, and the governor designates 1 member to serve as chair. Present with us today, we have Commissioner Ann Cheney. She represents the 3rd District. Commissioner Debbie Coe represents the 5th District. Commissioner Kim Delaney Ellis represents the state at large. Commissioner Rabbi Lifton represents the state at large. Commissioner Garnetta Smith represents the state at large. Commissioner Tim Thomas represents the 1st District. Not present today is Commissioner Louis Fuentes, who also represents the state at large. And our Vice Chair, Dr. Frank Smith, represents the 4th District, but is not able to be with us today. And of course, I'm Alma Randolph, and I serve as the chair and represent the 2nd District. I am very honored to be a part of this awesome event that our staff has put together. I know that it's going to be very informative, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today.
Thank you, Chair Randolph.
I cannot see anyone, so.
So before we jump in, just to give you a little bit more of an idea of our work,
that something was happening.
We wanted to start with Erin Spalding just to give us a little information about her and her enforcement team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erin Spalding. I'm the enforcement supervisor at the commission. We currently have a total of 5 investigators. We have 1 investigator that's dedicated solely to investigating housing cases. We have 1 investigator who is half housing and half employment. She is also our bilingual investigator, so she kind of fits in wherever we need her to. And then we have 3 full-time employment and public accommodation investigators. And pretty much we are neutral fact finders as we investigate the case.
And Mary Ann Taylor, could you tell us about your role in your team?
Good afternoon. I'm just thrilled to see so many of you on the call. That is a part of our role. I do head up the education and outreach unit as well as intake. And Mr. Sullivan has already given you a brief synopsis of just what intake entails. Education and outreach, as he said, this is a 9-hour drive to get from one end of Kentucky to the other. And we have a staff of 4. We do the very best we can. We're doing a lot of virtual meetings such as this. I'm just so excited to see so many of you on here that I haven't seen since the pandemic. So welcome, and I will be on this call to answer any questions you have about intake, education, and/or outreach. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. So just to dive in, we wanted to start by recognizing individual guests who are going to give us a little bit of information about what they do, especially in relation to human rights in their state or whatever area they represent. Our first guest is Beverly Watts, who is the Executive Director of the Tennessee Human Rights Commission.
Good afternoon. It's always a privilege, as they say, to be home. Louisville is still officially my home. I know I don't get there as often as I need to. I'm the director at the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. I've sort of been around and about since I left the Kentucky Commission, which is now about 16 years ago. It doesn't seem that long. What I will say is it was an enjoyable time. I see familiar faces, so I'm glad to be here today. When Juan asked me to do this, I didn't know I would have six WebExes and everything today. So you are number 3. I still have 3 to go. But what I want to do is talk about education and outreach in the enforcement effort. All too often, we think of education and outreach as an aside. But one of the most important elements we at the Tennessee Human Rights feel, and I did when I was in Kentucky, was that education and outreach is one of the more critical components of the enforcement initiative. We talk about rights and responsibilities. At the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, we conduct, we talk about the enforcement side. We get about 500 complaints in. I think our open inventory is about 400 right now. We're AWS, working from anywhere we can find a table and a laptop computer, like most of you all. I do have some people who are in the office in a variety of places. And by the way, our state is a little bit longer than yours, Terrence. For me to get from, if I'm in Memphis, for me to get from Memphis to Johnson City, which is on the border of Virginia and North Carolina, takes me longer than I even want to think about today. North to south, however, I can get there in an hour and a half. I can go from right at Franklin, Kentucky, which is really kind of our border Kentucky city, to the Alabama base in about an hour and a half, 2 hours max, assuming there's no traffic in Nashville, of course. But we handle 96 counties. I went down when I got to Tennessee, but we have a population that's probably about 2 million more than you. And we have 4 metro areas, which also challenges us in terms of what we do in terms of enforcement. We have 8 investigators in employment, 5 dedicated to housing. We have a Title VI unit because we also do enforcement on Title VI for the state of Tennessee and all of our state agencies. And we have 2 attorneys. Our court docket right now is the largest it has been. We have about 10 cases on the docket in one form or another, either preparing for hearing, et cetera. But the bigger piece of what we do, and the reason I'm on all these calls today, is our education and outreach component. Last year we did 110 events. And that's because COVID prevented us from even doing anything during the last quarter. The year before that, we did 121. These are a variety of things. We partner with organizations. We sponsor events. We're panelists. We're on planning committees. I go to chamber meetings. I go to church meetings of all faiths. We do local advocates throughout the state. And then we work with employment and housing lawyers. And we do events where we do CLE credits for a variety of things, which also serves for us to let the public know what their rights are and what their responsibilities are. We do MLK celebrations. I think we have 6 coming up in January. We do Black History Month celebrations, Women's History Month. We have 4 fair housing events that take me from across the state, and I'm invariably in Knoxville and responsible for being in Memphis within 4 hours. That's impossible to do. And I don't have any police escorts, by the way. We attend conferences on requests from a variety of organizations at both the state level as well as local levels. For example, branches ask us to do their dinners, and we also do the state conference. We do those in partnership with the EEOC in the last 3 years. That means the district director out of the Memphis office and I will go to the EEOC and do a joint presentation. We do 5 joint presentations right now with the EEOC, even though they only pay us for 1. We do about 5 presentations annually. We also conduct a workshop with one of the larger law firms, Wimberly Lawson, which is located in Knoxville, Nashville, and Chattanooga annually, where they bring in 600 plus clients and potential clients, where the EEOC and myself will go in and do that workshop for them as well. We talk about how to file a complaint if you are someone who thinks you've been discriminated against. We tell you what to do if you have gotten that letter. As I say, if you've gotten the greetings letter from me that says, thank you very much, we want to let you know that you have a charge. We don't always want to see people when we have a charge. We want to see people when we are actually meeting with them around education and outreach. So we train human resources individuals, we train individuals on their staff, you name it. I do major chambers, I do specific chambers throughout the state. And on request, we do diversity, equity and inclusion and implicit bias seminars. We limit those somewhat, but usually they fill in with SHRM and or some of the other professional organizations. On most of these, including our fair housing seminar in Memphis, our employment law seminar that we run in Nashville with the Tennessee Department of Tennessee Human Resources Department, and with several others. We have CLEs, that's legal credits, and we also have human resource credits, and we get certification from the requisite organization to give them credits. So usually our employment law seminar now, which is over 20 years old, usually has 200, 300 people in attendance. We did one in October. We had 230 people who were virtually online to hear 6 attorneys from across the state, employment attorneys for respondents and employment attorneys for complaining parties, to talk about the law and the issues as they see them. So that's been a wonderful partnership that we have had with folks. As when I was in Kentucky, I serve on quite a few boards and commissions. I've been on the state SHRM board. I've been on the local SHRM board for Middle Tennessee, et cetera. And I served as their diversity chair for at least 3-4 years, where we would do lunch and learns. And half of the lunch and learns was really on the law. So we'd have the EEOC, we'd have myself and some of our staff come in, others. We'd have any number of groups come in to talk about what can you do and how can you do it. Most of these were HR people, by the way. We do joint programs with HUD. We don't do as much TV as we did when we were in Kentucky. I used to be the morning show queen. If it was something going on, Cynthia Fox,
hey, how are you?
See on the screen, would schedule me for those 5 a.m. scheduled meetings and others. I don't do much of that, but we do some TV in the markets around the state. We do more radio. And right now we're doing more of these virtual programs, which actually has been a blessing in disguise, I think, unless you have 8 of them in a day or 6 or 7. But those are some of the things we do. Our social media presence is pretty good. We have a Twitter account, we have a Facebook account, and we consistently keep our website updated on a monthly basis. We did a seminar this morning for International Human Rights Day, and we targeted the Chattanooga market. It'll be up on our website sometime before the end of the day. I'm doing another one in Nashville at 6. It'll be up, or a link will be up by tomorrow so people can do that. And we've done 2 fair housing events in the last 30 days. All of those are on our website, in addition to a few other things we've done, and our employment law seminar. In 2013, we were 50 years old from the date we were created by Governor Frank Clements. And what we did on that date was, we celebrated throughout the state. We had 4 statewide 50th anniversary celebrations in all of the metro markets: Knoxville, Memphis, Nashville, and Chattanooga. In Nashville, we were fortunate enough to have it in conjunction with the 13th Amendment exhibit at the Tennessee State Museum. In 2014, our commissioners conducted 4 hearings throughout the state on the status of human rights in Tennessee. This program still runs on YouTube and can be found under Tennessee Human Rights Commission, and we've done a few of those. So we continue to do things on an ongoing basis that allows us to tap and touch the public markets in a variety of ways. I am set to be on a meeting in the next, I think 25 minutes or so, but if anyone has questions, you want to email me or you want to ask them now, that's up to you. But I will just stop here and say that COVID-19 has challenged us in more ways than we thought possible, but COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to connect. We have 4 offices in Tennessee, so it's hard sometimes. So now we connect virtually, which we had not done before COVID-19. And I think a week from today or a week from tomorrow, we'll have an all-employee meeting. Our celebrations are usually in person. So we're going to figure out how this thing works when you celebrate virtually with your staff. But the primary purpose is really to maintain contact. So we've done that and we'll continue to do that. Terrence, I will turn it back over. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. When I started, I heard a lot of the great things that you did here. So big shoes to fill. And
you've got all the right people with you. You got the staff. You've got Cynthia Fox. I saw Altita McWhee. So you've got the people who helped me look good. I just want to say that publicly about staff at the Kentucky Commission. So I was not it. They were the puppeteers making me look good. So I thank them publicly.
Well, thank you. You talked about your education and outreach efforts, and you mentioned the EEOC. And our next speaker is Mr. Brian Shoemaker, Outreach and Education Coordinator of the EEOC.
Yes, well, thank you, Terrence. I appreciate it. And I am so glad that people are talking about outreach and education. My name is Brian Shoemaker. I'm with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And what I do is outreach and education for the district, the Indianapolis district. The Indianapolis district is all of Indiana. It's all of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It's all of Michigan and then half of Ohio. And so, my job is essentially to talk about outreach, to communicate educational opportunities to people. And I think it's just try to be a liaison for the EEOC to companies, to advocacy groups and whatnot. And so I'm really happy to be able to talk to you today. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I had something in my throat. So the EEOC, as I'm sure you know, is a federal agency. We deal with law enforcement with the complaints resolving or about employment discrimination. So that's our job. That is our main focus. What I wanted to talk to you today about was really, and I didn't want to get too in depth into anything in particular, but I did want to talk about some of our enforcement plan and some of the things that we are really focusing on. And so the main thing that we're really focusing on right now is eliminating barriers to recruitment and hiring. And so, excuse me, I am so sorry. This is what happens, I think, sometimes when you're doing things live. So eliminating barriers to recruitment and hiring, that is our main focus right now. And the EEOC is really doing a lot to try to prepare companies and to let companies know that one of the best ways to eliminate discrimination that's occurring in their workplace is to prevent these barriers and to cast a wide net to allow as many people, qualified applicants, to enter into their workplace and be qualified and at least be on the hiring process. And so we've been doing a lot of outreach to companies to talk about what barriers there are for people in the communities, and primarily, and which is I really like about this particular session today, is that it's a really great opportunity to make connections between advocacy groups and businesses. And the way the EEOC is looking at this is if businesses and advocacy groups can come together to talk about barriers to employment, or at least have communication with each other, that when there are issues that come up in the workplace, they have options. They are aware of places where they can go to get answers. And that's one of the things that the EOC is really focusing on. And hopefully we'll be doing a bunch of events. And I hope that you will see some of our events that we're going to be doing throughout the year about breaking down barriers, where we bring advocacy groups together with businesses and talk about issues and problems that may be within a business's hiring or recruitment process. The other thing that we are really focused on is protecting immigrant and migrant workers and other vulnerable workers. And right now, the EOC is really focused on those vulnerable workers that may have intellectual disabilities or are first-time employees, people that have just gone out into the workplace for the first time. They may not be familiar with the workplace. They may be very young employees, maybe people that haven't been in the workplace for a long time and now are re-entering the workplace, and being able to provide outreach to them so they know what the laws are and they know what their rights are as well. We're very interested always in enforcing equal pay laws. And so we'll be providing a lot of outreach this year about equal pay laws and making sure that people are being paid for the skill that they are doing. Preserving access to the legal system, and that is just making sure people, the primary focus of that is retaliation and making sure people are not retaliated against when they bring up issues that are in their workplace. And then finally, it's preventing harassment through systemic enforcement and targeted outreach. And we have been really focused on, and I hope you've heard of these are respectful workplace trainings that the EOC has been doing. We've been doing them all across the country. I do several every year, and in fact, it's been getting busier and busier. And what we try to do is we try to inform and educate employers about how to create a respectful workplace that will prevent discrimination, prevent harassment from occurring in work in the future. And so, if we allow companies to build a culture of civility in their workplace, that we have seen really will reduce harassment and discrimination. And that's the main goal of the EOC, is to reduce those things. We do not want, if we could put ourselves out of the job, and I think that's what most people would say, if we can put ourselves out of a job because we're not getting complaints of discrimination, because it's not happening, that would be wonderful. And so we want to make sure that companies are able to handle these issues properly, and really be able to create an environment where things get solved within the company, or it doesn't happen at all. And that's what we're hoping to do by our prevention efforts with Respectful Workplace. So I just wanted to highlight those main things. I also want to make myself available. I've met most of you. I was looking at this call here. I've seen most of you. I've met most of you. But if I have not, please feel free to reach out to me. You can always email me. You can always call me. I want to be a liaison for you. I want to be a resource for you, whether it's questions or whether it's training. Let me know how I can help your organization or the community in which you serve. So, I just want to put that there, and I'll be here for questions as well.
Thank you, Brian. One thing you said made me reflect on something that I have often said about our agency. And as you said, you wish there weren't complaints. My goal here is to do the work so well that this agency doesn't need to exist anymore. And so that's the goal long term. But right now, we'll do everything we can to support people who do need us. Our next guest is Samuel Thorner, who is the senior staff attorney for the Kentucky Housing Corporation.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me to come join you today. My name is Sam Thorner, and I'm a senior staff attorney with the Kentucky Housing Corporation, which is Kentucky's state housing finance agency. I'll start with a quick history of how KHC got started. We're a direct product of the work of a hardworking and formidable civil rights advocate, Kentucky State Representative May Street Kidd. When she was elected, Representative Kidd was only one of 3 African Americans in the state legislature, and she set to work championing civil rights. The first bill she sponsored prohibited racial discrimination in housing, making Kentucky the first Southern state to enact this kind of law on its own. She was also behind Kentucky's ratification of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Representative Kidd's work continued from there, and she is credited with getting the Kentucky General Assembly to create Kentucky Housing Corporation in 1972. By all accounts, she was passionate about housing justice, and we carry her dedication with us to this day. At KHC, our mission is to invest in quality housing solutions for families and communities across Kentucky. This mission guides everything that we do at KHC. We know this mission is critical because studies show that housing is fundamental to human success. A 2019 report from the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness referred to a body of evidence indicating that when people experience housing instability, their prospects for future educational achievement, employment, health, and family preservation are significantly reduced. According to the same report, a disproportionate number of households of color face significant housing needs and homelessness. At KHC, we work hard through our many programs to make stable housing possible for as many Kentuckians as we can. With our homeownership programs, KHC provides funding for mortgages, down payment assistance, foreclosure prevention, home building, home repair, and weatherization. We also fund the development and preservation of rental housing and administer the Section 8 rental assistance programs for much of the state. KHC is also extensively involved in homeless housing and homelessness prevention throughout the state. These programs serve an incredibly large and diverse population, and we take our obligations to fairly and equitably serve those populations very seriously. Housing is a basic human need, and our mission of providing safe, quality, affordable housing opportunities is supported by our work to ensure Kentuckians' right to fair housing free from discrimination. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 ensures that federal financial assistance is provided free from discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin. Many of KHC programs involve federal funding, and we are committed to ensuring access to our programs by taking a proactive approach to fully implement procedures that eliminate discrimination. Under the umbrella of Title VI, KHC has adopted a language access plan to provide access to KHC programs and services for persons with limited proficiency in the English language. KHC translates many of our program documentation into Spanish and provides language assistance services for interactions with clients who have limited English proficiency. Last month, KHC implemented a new feature in our website that translates our entire website into over 100 languages, further expanding access to our programs and services online. In addition to Title VI, the Fair Housing Act of 1968 is a critical component of KHC's mission to providing safe, quality, affordable housing opportunities. The Fair Housing Act provides equal opportunity to all who buy, sell, rent, or finance housing. It protects an individual's basic right to choose where to live and ensures equal treatment in obtaining housing. KHC maintains its commitment to fair housing throughout every program it administers, and all entities receiving financial assistance from KHC for housing-related activities are required to uphold the Fair Housing Act. As a recipient of grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, KHC has an obligation to affirmatively further fair housing under the Fair Housing Act. In coordination with the Kentucky Department of Local Government, in 2019, KHC developed a new analysis of impediments to fair housing. This analysis includes a review of demographic and housing data, an assessment of progress achieved in fair housing over the previous 5 years, an analysis of public and private sector policies and programs that impact housing decisions across Kentucky, and a list of impediments to fair housing choice for Kentuckians. It also includes a Fair Housing Action Plan, identifying recommended actions for KHC, the Department of Local Government, and other state and local government entities to address those impediments identified in the document. As part of KHC's commitment to ensuring access to persons with limited English proficiency, KHC is in the process of translating the analysis of impediments into Spanish. A link to the AI is available on KHC's website. We're now preparing for our 50th year at KHC. In many ways, it feels like KHC has been part of the Commonwealth of Kentucky for forever because we've been able to accomplish so much, but we know there is still much more work to do. And as we move into 2021, KHC is more dedicated than ever to Representative Kidd's vision of safe and secure housing for all Kentuckians. Like all of you, we at KHC are painfully aware of the tragedies that 2020 has brought us. From the killing of
All of you, we at KHC are painfully aware of the tragedies 2020 has brought us. All of you, we at KHC are painfully aware of the tragedies.
These events have led us to take a hard look at ourselves and ask, where can we do better? We are currently finalizing an agreement with a professional firm to provide top-down, inside-out analysis of our culture and operations at KHC. The goal of this work will be to develop a strategic plan and training program that is centered on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We want these principles to be at the center of everything that we do, from operations to programming to contracting and procurement. We also have strengthened our efforts of our Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Committee and formed a separate internal task force to work specifically on developing program ideas aimed at increasing housing equity and justice. In addition to examining our internal operations and our external programs, KHC is proud to partner with organizations who work to advance equity and inclusion in housing. We recently announced 2 multi-year grant commitments that we think will lead to more great work in this area. The first is to the Fayette County Local Development Corporation, a subsidiary of the Lexington Urban League, to assist in developing rental units in areas of Lexington that are at risk of gentrification. The second is to the Louisville Urban League to aid its efforts in increasing home ownership and preventing foreclosures in West Louisville. We are excited to see what other opportunities arise in the future for similar partnerships. So that's a brief summary of what we're working on over at KHC. We understand that we cannot achieve success alone. The efforts of our partners, such as the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, the Lexington Fair Housing Council, and others, are invaluable to our work of protecting housing rights of Kentuckians. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Sam. Just jumping ahead, I want to turn it over to Mary Ann Taylor, who was going to introduce some of the local and community leaders who are doing some of this work at a more local level, and they can give us a sense of what they're seeing right now. So Mary Ann?
Sure, and not to put any of you on the spot that perhaps weren't expecting to be put on the spot, but in essence, that's exactly what I'm doing. Right now, I have a screen that has approximately 15 people on it. There's 54 people on this call. It's almost impossible to find you all. So I'm literally going to scroll through the screen and just pick out names and start talking with you, mostly because I'm just so excited to see so many of you that I haven't seen for a while. But we really want to kind of get a handle and a feel for what is going on across the state and then in the states that surround us as well. If you don't mind, I'll start with the 2 guys at the top of my third screen. 3 guys, Ray Sexton, Art Crosby, and Charles Johnson. Glad to see all 3 of you gentlemen. If you would unmute yourself. Ray, we'll start with you, then Art, and then Charles. Tell us where you're from and a little bit about what is going on in your area. I realize Ray and Art are both in Lexington. However, Art covers the state as much, if not more than we do. So we'll go in that order. Ray, Art, and Charles, if each of you could take maybe 5 to 8 minutes and give us a feel for what's going on in your world. Thanks.
Sure. Somehow I knew I was going to have to go first. But I appreciate the invitation from Juan and Mr. Sullivan to join you guys this afternoon. Good to see a lot of familiar faces that we haven't got to see in a while. But my name is Ray Sexton. I'm the executive director of the Lexington Human Rights Commission. At a local level, we do many of the same things that the Kentucky Commission do. We investigate discrimination complaints in the areas of employment, housing, and public accommodation. And for the past couple of years, we've also been tasked with doing the city's ADA compliance with respect to like parking lots and signage and things of that nature. So it's been like everywhere else. It's been a very interesting year. We have a really small staff here in Lexington. We have 4 full-time employees, and probably for the last couple months, I've had 3 full-time employees. I had 1 employee go on some extended leave, so we're kind of 1 person down for the past couple months. So it's also had its share of challenges. Right now, since March, we've been predominantly teleworking. However, our office is never closed. We've had 1 person in the office at least 1 day a week, while the other remaining people telework from home. The challenge for us this year has been how to we've had a lot of talk early on about the community outreach. The challenge has been for a small agency such as ours is how do we continue our outreach and education in this land of this pandemic. We've been doing a lot of virtual things. We engaged our local housing professionals and leasing agents once we got the hang of this Zoom, these Zoom features. Is we realized that maybe there were a lot of real estate agents and rental professionals who may not have had the opportunity to get the required their requirements for their real estate and their continuing education credits. So what we've been doing for the last couple of months is we've had we created our own virtual fair housing training academy and engaged our local real estate professionals to say, hey, would you be interested in doing this? We did it free of charge. And we're doing it over a period of 6 sessions every 2 weeks, and each session lasts 1 hour. And for each session, we tackle a different topic. We've done general fair housing, we did national origin, harassment. We're going to do familial status issues, as well as some other issues as well. So that's been relatively successful for us to kind of continue our relationship with our fair housing professionals. Art Crosby is going to be talking a little bit later. He's done a tremendous job here in Lexington to get a jump on all the mass eviction issues that's happening in Lexington and across the Commonwealth. And I'm not going to go too much into that because I don't want to steal Art's thunder, but he's created a work group that we've been a part of and keeping a pulse on what's going on with the mass evictions. Also, after the pandemic started and the racial unrest started occurring earlier in the spring, the mayor of Lexington created a commission on racial equality task force that we were a part of. And I, as well as Shayla Lynch, who I saw that was on here, she's on this call as well. You may be hearing from her later, was made co-chairs of one of the 5 main committees. We chaired the Housing and Gentrification Committee, and the mayor tasked us with 60 days to study our issue and by the end of the summer issue a final report that made some pretty hard. Our task was to make recommendations that kind of tackled the systemic and systematic racism and the things that were institution that's been instituted for a long time. So we issued our report toward the end of the year. I think there were 52 recommendations made overall on the whole report with all the committees, and that's been received well. And the mayor, from the last count, the mayor is I think she's on addressing 27 of the 52. So there's being work done, and there's probably what's going to happen next year is that commission is going to be appointed full time. And the main function of this commission would be to help hold this current administration as well as future administrations kind of holding their feet to the fire with respect to that report that the commission did and the 50 so recommendations that they made to make sure that those recommendations are addressed and some of the things that are recommended actually come to fruition. So again, our case numbers are down. We're not getting a lot of calls in the office because of individuals kind of still up in the air on their job situation as well as their housing situations. We anticipate at any moment when evictions start occurring more frequently and when people start going back to work, that the people that are in these kind of positions on these commissions, these larger and smaller commissions, are going to be really busy in the next coming year or so. So it's an interesting time to be in this field, and we appreciate everybody's partnerships that we enjoy with many of you on all these screens that I see before me. And again, thank you for the invitation, and I'll be quiet now.
Art?
Okay.
Art Crosby, where are you?
Yeah, I'm here. I think it's a unique time in our history, at least since I've been in this field, to talk about racial inequality. I think people are more open to listening to that, and I think it's important we start having that discussion. I think especially housing inequality. I go around and do talks for realtors, and I ask realtors, why do people live where they want to live? And realtors will give me all the reasons, schools, safety, job, transportation. And I ask, why do we have areas that are all black? Why do we have areas that are all white? And I get the explanation that people just want to live where they're comfortable. And it's just interesting that their clients are all picking for one reason, and then everybody else is picking for a different reason, which doesn't really make sense. And we know why people are segregated. We know historically, we know Louisville had a 1914 ordinance. We know the history of Berea, or why Berea looks like it does. We know that these things were intentional. And I completely believe that even if the commission and my office came in and we ended all intentional housing discrimination from here on, it wouldn't fix where we're at, because the stuff has been so ingrained. You can just let the system go and it will continue to do what it's doing. And I think that's nowhere more obvious than what's happening with COVID. COVID has a minority disproportionate impact. I think we know it's gonna, when we're looking at eviction court, we know that it's, at least in most of your major cities, it's gonna be a white judge, a white landlord, a white attorney, and a black tenant getting put out. And it's gonna be something that happens really quick. People don't pay a lot of attention to it, and it's gonna happen in mass. And we just treat renters as different than homeowners. We just have a system that's set up like that. I think people will just keep moving through. And I think we have to pay attention to that. I think when we talk about the COVID response and the money that comes in, these cities are going to be getting millions of dollars. We have to talk about where that money is going to go, who's getting it, and are you using that in an equitable way? I think the commission continues to do its look at who's in the board, who's on the different boards, what's the representation like, all of that kind of thing. I think we have to big picture talk about sexual orientation. I think there's a new Supreme Court case. I think the commission has to be aggressive in making sure that gender is covered and sexual orientation is covered under gender, and that's getting out and people understand that that coverage exists. But I say all that to say these are big picture things that I think it would be nice if we all could do. But I think the most important thing that the commission can do is just to do that job that's already in front of it, which means the enforcement. It's nice to always talk about the education and outreach, but if you get people in, but you don't have the resources and the staff to actually take care of the cases in front of you, it doesn't really help. I think the commission I've seen lately has completely, the enforcement in terms of investigators was always there, but sometimes things would just hit a wall. I think this last few months, 6 months, the commission has turned a corner. Things are moving forward, but I think that's where the focus has to be. You have to be able to do the work before you go out and tell people about the work you're doing. That's all I got.
Thank you. Okay, Charles, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am. Say hello to everybody. Charles Johnson, Executive Director for the Henderson County Human Rights. And so I'm kind of a one-man shop. I'm the Executive Director, the Secretary, the janitor, the coffee maker. So I do it kind of all myself. So I'm certainly appreciative of all the work and effort that all of you do. I was on the Missouri International Day earlier today and heard a lot of great speakers, and looking forward to hearing a lot from you. A lot of good things is happening here in Henderson from a positive standpoint. We tend to think that we live in smaller areas, that we're shielded from some of the social injustice, the various things that we're seeing taking place around our nation, but not so. We're very active. I have a board of 7 people, and we're very active, a very diverse board. They're very excited. I'm very thankful when I started here last year for Miss Mary Ann Taylor and Mr. Juan Pena for their work, their effort, as well as Mr. Bernard out of Hopkinsville. He's now retired, Human Rights. If y'all know Bernard, Standard did a awesome job. So very helpful with cases and stuff. A lot of the cases that we've probably seen here in Henderson since the COVID-19 has been housing related. The evictions, the courts went down, kind of basically around the state, courts went down. Seen a lot of eviction. Going back to what Mr. Crosby was saying, that it's been kind of the opposite in this local area, more so as opposed to the African Americans. has been more the Caucasians, probably being evicted and various things like that. So we work very closely with the courts to make sure, along with the real estate agencies, and just like most of you in the local areas, this may not be the proper a word to say or the proper lingual, but we have some jacked up landlords that we see in our areas, so that we have to really keep an eye on to make sure that they're complying with the rules and stuff. Back in the spring, with the highlight of Breonna Taylor and some various other things that took place, we were very instrumental in organizing some community events, working with some of our local organizations, the NAACP, along with some other agencies to orchestrate some marches and some peaceful protest in our tri-state area. And it was certainly a great learning moment and a great opportunity to let our young folks shine and to let our young folks speak and to let them have a voice. So oftentimes they hear it from the older generation, but it was a great opportunity to allow our young professionals to voice their concerns and their frustrations and do it on a peaceful. I have a very strong relationship with our local police department, as well as the sheriff's department. Work very closely with the Chamber of Commerce here in Henderson, along with the local Red Cross. So this office here is very active in the community. And that's one of the things, once I get on Zoom and I listen to other state directors like Ms. Watts was sharing, and I certainly want to reach out to her. Some of the things that the local agencies can do to be more effective and more visible in the community area, because when they talk about human rights, we still see a large number of people that don't know that a human rights exist and what is the purpose and the background of human rights. So that is a continuous moment for us here to educate our community what human rights is and how it benefits and how it works on behalf of the people. And so I'm open to always trying to improve and see and glean what some things that can be learned and be done to promote that. One of the things, what my goal when I started was not to be an office that was reactive on things, but to be proactive in the community. Not just that we come to the forefront when somebody's rights has been violated from a negative standpoint, but that we can be a positive change in our community too. So we're really working hard on that. And you hear me say in my sentences, we, because I envision one day having an office where I have an assistant, where I have staff, where I have various things. So I try to be proactive in my sentences stuff, because when I'm out and about in the community, they say, we, who's we? I thought you was a one-man shop. I said, well, I envision. So we certainly have to have goals. If you don't have goals for yourself and your department, it's going to be a challenge. Thank all of you. I know Miss Alma very well from the Owensboro, and thank all of you for all that you do around the state. And I can't say enough for Miss Marianne and Mr. Juan. They have certainly been very helpful to me. And I know when they get emails and phone calls, this is Charles Johnson again. There's no telling what he wants, but I'm thankful for them and all that they do throughout the state and for all that you guys do. So thank you for that.
Thank you. One thing we want to be sure to do is in this portion of the day, we want to touch on a lot of different type of issues, and we want to be sure that we touch on different parts of the state. So I am going to right now give you a list of names, and as I call your name, it's kind of like school. I just want you to take 3 to 5 minutes, because that's really all that we can allot in this time period, and tell us what is going on as I said, with your agencies, what your main focus is. And if you want to add how we as the commission can be of assistance to you, sort of a holiday wish list, if you would. I definitely want to start with Alice Waddell. She's in Bowling Green. That'll hit some of the Western Kentucky, some more of the Western Kentucky area. Chris Hartman, I know that you're still on the line. At least I think you're still here. Karina, if you could talk a little bit about our immigrant and refugee populations and what you've got going on. Eduardo, I see you sitting there very patiently, and we always like to hear from our wise elders. Not that you're an elder, you just look wise with the beard. So we want to hear from you as well. Bonnie, you can maybe give us some information on what's going on in Northern Kentucky. And then we'll finish up with Reverend Blythe, and you can take us down to Richmond. And Richmond's what we call that Eastern Kentucky Gateway, and help us know what's going on. I wrote these names down in case you didn't keep up with all that. So we'll just keep rolling right through them, and we'll start with Alice in Bowling Green.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just according to some of the things that I've previously heard from some of the people that have spoken, I think we're pretty much on point with some of the things that we're doing here in Bowling Green and Warren County. We rely heavily on partnerships. We have 2 people on our staff. So we really work hard to build partnerships with other agencies. Of course, you know, we rely on Kentucky Commission and Lexington Fair Housing Council every day, you know, so I appreciate that. We could not resolve the issues that we do here without your help. For those who may not know, we're intake office, and we really put emphasis on making sure people's complaint forms are prepared properly, and the information that's needed for you all is there when they reach your desk. So we counsel on that. It gives us the opportunity to educate people when they do not have discrimination complaints, what discrimination consists of, and it's a teaching experience, a learning experience in every case, either way. One of the things that we built partnerships with in this area as a response to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, we had a great group of young people who organized the protest, and they did a wonderful job. So some of us old heads, like me, who's done the march before and that stuff, we decided to start thinking about some things that we could do outside of the protest. And we formed a group called Game Changers. And as someone mentioned earlier, one of the main points for this group is to eliminate barriers when it comes to employment opportunities, and to work hard on increasing the visibility of Black employees in Bowling Green. We just looked at some of the schools, businesses, local government, and put the focus on what's going on there. And we started at a point of looking at who's already there and who can move up into better positions, which would be a good point to start at. So at this point, we have 4 people working on their master's in teaching certificate with financial help at Western Kentucky University, who will be able to move from positions like substitute teachers and teachers' aides into teaching positions, and working with the school superintendents to make that happen. And we've increased employment at county government to employees that I know of that's new, and also assisted people that are beginning small businesses. There's 2 at this point that I know of that will be that have had assistance with making their business plans and finding the financial assistance to open a new business and also a location. So all this coming about from the partnerships that we're building. We have a new mayor, so we'll be building a relationship with him as we did in the past with our past mayor. I think that's pretty much it. The housing issues that we're facing here now is mostly affordable housing, evictions, and homelessness, more so than discrimination complaints. I think we've eliminated a lot of the discrimination complaints in housing through education and outreach, which Beverly mentioned the importance of, and we do more of that as far as outreach and education than any other area. I was glad to hear Mr. Shoemaker talk about the training for respectful workplace. I'm very interested in that, so I'm really glad to get that information. So
All right.
I could go on, but I think that's enough.
Okay, thank you, Alice. And Chris, are you there?
Marianne, I love seeing you. Hello. This at
Hey.
least is a great opportunity to see people that I love without masks on. So I'm grateful for that. I use he, him pronouns. I'm executive director of the Fairness Campaign. We're the statewide LGBTQ advocacy group. And I love seeing so many faces of folks with whom I've worked over the past decade. When I started at the Fairness Campaign, there were 3 communities, as many of you all remember, that had what we call fairness ordinances that expand employment, housing, and public accommodations protections to include sexual orientation and gender identity. Now, many of you help enforce the 20 municipal fairness ordinances that we have helped pass in the last several years. It's been catching like wildfire. We had a huge string in Northern Kentucky recently. The 2 most recent ordinances are Newport in Northern Kentucky, and then the county, the only other county outside of Fayette and Jefferson, Woodford County, has its fairness ordinance now. And so I just want to appreciate everyone who does great work to help enforce those ordinances, or those who help us try to pass them, like Director Waddell, who was just with us, who has helped advocate in Bowling Green, where we still need to pass a fairness ordinance. So many of you all are aware about the Supreme Court ruling over the summer, Bostock, which now says that employment protections exist all across the US for LGBTQ people under sex discrimination. That's huge. And by extension, we should be interpreting that to include housing as well. So all of your agencies, I'm hoping, will take LGBTQ discrimination complaints in housing under sex discrimination along with employment. Public accommodations is still the piece that is going to be hanging out there. And so that's still probably going to require a statewide fairness law. We're still probably going to keep on passing fairness ordinances in additional cities. Recently, Cynthiana did a partial fairness ordinance. They left out employment because of Bostock. Now, we don't want to do that. We want all fairness ordinances to include all 3 areas of protection, but they picked up public accommodations to fill in that federal gap. So, you know, we're still going to be pushing in the Kentucky General Assembly to try to pass a statewide fairness law that'll close that public accommodations gap. It's likely still not going to happen anytime soon. The pro-LGBTQ bill that's getting a lot of momentum is the conversion therapy ban. And we now have 2 cities that have passed bans on conversion therapy, which try to tell children that they can turn from being gay or trans. And that would be Covington first, and then Louisville second. I thoroughly expect some more cities to start picking that up as well. But the big thing I want to flag for folks in terms of LGBTQ rights across the state, we've had a lot of positive momentum on the municipal level, but we have faced more anti-LGBTQ laws in Frankfort in the past couple of years than we have in the past decade combined. Transgender children are on the chopping block. These are the folks who are being attacked in Frankfort. We expect to see again an anti-transgender athletic ban for schools, an anti-transgender bathroom bill again, all sorts of things in Frankfort. We're hoping that they won't get any traction, but we're going to need your all's help. And we also expect to see some challenges to the fairness ordinances. Just like Louisville's fairness ordinance is in a federal court case right now with a challenge from the national conservative think tank, the Alliance Defending Freedom, the Nelson Photography case, I expect to see legislation in Frankfurt that will seek to undermine the 20 local fairness ordinances that we have. So I'll be calling on all of you all, our allies, as I always do, to show up and to help us amplify our voices in Frankfurt to make certain that at least we don't pass any of these anti-LGBTQ laws that the legislature continues to consider. And so thank you all for your great work, and thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Chris. Always a pleasure. Karina.
Hi,
There you are.
hello. So good to see you. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everyone. A big Latinx hug to all of you. I'm so very proud to be in company of so many amazing people that I love and that I admire. I want to start by saying that immigrant rights are human rights as well. Unfortunately, in the current rhetoric that we have, systematically, the systematic racism and the systematic invisibility that immigrant communities have to face have dehumanized us. And a lot of people believe, unfortunately, that immigrants do not have rights. So I want to share with you, first of all, I am very proud to be part of La Casita Center, which is a community of Latinx hospitality. I wish we wouldn't be so unique in the whole state. When people ask me, what does La Casita do? I tell them, you name it, we do it. And if we don't do it, we make it up. Why? Because the issues that our community face on a daily basis are conditions that are so unique and are based on the exploitation, the oppression of very hardworking people. The rhetoric of believing that we don't pay taxes, which is a lie, has given a platform to so many people to take advantage of the fear of our community. And in the irony of it all, we know that Kentucky has the amazing support, economic support of immigrants. That's why our horse industry, our farming, that's why our construction, our yard work, our restaurants are so successful and booming because of the presence of immigrants. And it is very important that we believe in human rights, that start looking at our immigrant siblings, at our immigrant neighbors as our own. And maybe together we can stop that invisibility, for us to stop being invited at the end when somebody needs a picture, for us to be in the picture. It's important that we are sitting at the beginning, at the table, making decisions with all of us, because Kentucky is all of us. Even if you hear my accent, I am a very proud Latina Kentuckian, and I love my state, and I love my city, and I work every day. And I know I'm not the only one. There are so many of us right here in the school that we are also immigrants, and we believe in this state, and we believe in you all. So with that, I want to say that currently, COVID times have the very little silver lining of COVID has really put out there what is all the inequities that we have in our community, in our state regarding immigrants. It's very unfortunate to see that a lot of people are very scared to seek for health resources when they are sick, because they are afraid of profiling in our community. Having somebody that looks like me and sounds like me, it's in reality a fear that our community has. So in the times of COVID, seeking for help, seeking for testing, seeking for somebody to support families that are infected, have in reality show us that need was already there, that need, that fear, that oppression, that exploitation was already happening. So I wanted to take that time just to put it on the table for you all to know how much I appreciate the hard work. Big kudos to my great and amazing friend and brother, Juan Peña, for the effort that he has done through the years to continue putting the immigrant issues up front in this amazing state. And I wish you all a happy holidays. And I really hope that next year when we're having this conversation, I don't have to start to say that immigrant rights are also human rights. Muchas gracias.
Sorry about that, Eduardo.
All right, the old guard is coming back. It's more than the white hair. It's getting older.
We all are.
I want to add something what Karina say, but I'm going to be nasty like always I am. My big concerns about what is coming is how people are going to go back to work. What happened after COVID about discrimination? What is the level of salaries that people are going to have? Where are the interpreters in the state level and federal level? And yes, thank you so much for translating many things in Spanish. I appreciate that, but I am director of a community center that before COVID served more than 5,000 people for over 103 countries. And I had this morning a conversation with a family from Uganda who was dealing with a child at the hospital, and the interpreter was not from Uganda and messed up some of the information. Consequence, the child was taken away. So this is one piece, interpretation, real interpretation. I want to check KAC website and see how the interpretation is about the Spanish, because my experience with this kind of funny, beautiful computer interpretation systems is like, write this in English, see what's saying in Spanish, write in Spanish and see what's saying in English. And it's interesting the difference. Civil rights are civil rights that are absolutely crucial for our life. With the new administration at federal level, we are going to have an increase in refugees coming to Kentucky. This year, we have only 13,000 refugees allowed to come to the country. Hopefully, for next fiscal year, the promise is 135,000. So we are expecting, this is my number, don't take it more than my idea, that we are going to have around 2,500 newcomers in Kentucky for several parts of the world, mostly from Muslim countries. So I really love what Art say. What are we doing now so we don't need to be crazy 1 year from now? The action is what we have to do. We have a law in Kentucky. Actually, there are two laws. One is about driver's license, that you must to have a Social Security to get driver's license. When we are going to change that, so everyone, you and me, has to pay less insurance for our cars, because we are covered the people who don't have insurance because they cannot have a driver's license. What about the laws against immigrants? And it's in the books. The excuse that I listen is never was applied, but it's in the book. If an immigrant buys a house and not become citizen 5 years after they buy the house, the state has the power to take the house away. So this is in the book from 38, was put back or was renewed the law in the last 5-6 years. Like Chris, I'm looking for January to go back to Frankfurt almost every day. I think that we know every pothole in 64 between Louisville and Frankfurt, because we have, again, several proposals of legislations who are attacking immigrants. And the thing about education, about immigration, is few of us know the immigration law. So when you are listening on TV, oh, immigrants are applying for food stamps, I will say, okay, only if you are living in Kentucky more than 10 years, because for the first 10 years, any legal, documented, use whatever word you want to use there, cannot apply for any kind of federal aid or state aid. So when we had COVID, the help, the financial help, local level, state level, and federal level, one requirement was to have Social Security. So people with Social Security are not humans. We have problem with the police. We found out lately that we had the training at the state police department. You was using Nazi material. So Civil Rights Commission, I think that is part of your responsibility, actually our responsibility, to prevent these things. What about the increase on people going to be deported with reason or without reason? I show you, you were talking, I was taking notes. These are my notes. When I was moving my arms, there are my notes. I want to say again, thank you, Juan, but thank you, R, too, because it's time to do things. It's time for action. We cannot miss the opportunity to challenge the systematic abuse and oppression that we have in our system, not outside. Our own system is unfair. Our own system creates laws and policies to discriminate. And one for all is say, these are the things that are wrong. And as the Civil Rights Commission, what we are going to do to challenge them and to change them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are muted.
How about that? I know my husband would appreciate that more than you all. Anyway, I said we only have 2 more people and we're going to try to keep it at just a short 3-4 minutes because we do want to stay on schedule. I wish everyone could speak. It's just so many of us and that's wonderful. But we'll do Bonnie from Northern Kentucky and then Reverend Blythe, you can finish us up. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Bonnie Meyer. I use she, her pronouns. I am in Covington. I'm the founding director of the Office of LGBTQ Programs and Services at NKU, but I also serve as the chair of the Northern Kentucky Pride Center and have co-chaired the Northern Kentucky Pride Festival for about the last 8 or 9 years at this point. I think it's all kind of running together. I just want to provide a quick update. I know my colleague and friend Leo Calderon is on the call as well, and they've been doing a lot of really great work at Esperanza. We've been unable to open the Pride Center due to COVID. We have no ventilation system, so we're really hoping to open that soon. I do want to say regarding LGBTQ youth, particularly, have really experienced disproportionate challenges through COVID, from housing insecurity, students who even were super out on campus who have had to return to unsupportive homes, have had to return to the closet, trans students who have had to pause their transition because of the situations that they're in. Increased issues with mental health, with self-harm, with lack of accessibility to healthcare since they've had to return to their homes, and certainly LGBTQ students experiencing and reporting additional anti-LGBTQ bias and harassment, particularly LGBTQ students of color who are experiencing additional racism even from within the LGBTQ community itself. So there's so many additional challenges, I think, particularly about our youth in Northern Kentucky, across all of Kentucky, as we come out on the other side of this. And that's part of, I think, some of the excitement around the Northern Kentucky Pride Center, what we're hoping to do with the Pride Center. Chris mentioned a lot of the really great work that's happened in Northern Kentucky. We've seen a string of fairness ordinances pass across our cities. We saw the city of Covington pass the first ban on conversion therapy for minors back in March. We just saw our municipal equality index for the city of Covington stay pretty high. We're working on getting that one above 100 as well. And so we have a lot of really positive momentum here in Northern Kentucky. We're looking forward to opening the Pride Center so that we can extend the services to offer support groups with some of our partners, to offer free legal clinics for our community. And we're very excited to be located right next door to Esperanza, which is the Latino Center in Covington, and all sorts of really great programming with our friends next door.
I was saying thank you. Okay, Reverend Blythe, are you still on? He may have left. Okay, I'll turn this back over.
No, here I am.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I'm sorry.
3
One
to
of
5,
my,
please. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. One of my nephews said to me several months ago, "Unc, you're not old, but you're getting older." And technology sometimes is a challenge for me. And as soon as I think I've got it, something happens. Good afternoon to everyone. Let me do what we've been asked to do quickly here. But let me first of all thank this commission. About 15 years ago, this commission held our hand in the city of Richmond. We had an incident involving police and several Black citizens, and the work of the Kentucky Commission helped us through that. One of the first things that I did when I became a commissioner, and I'm now serving as mayor in my first term, but as commissioner back in 2003, one of the first things I noticed was that we had a commission on human rights for the city of Richmond, but it was inactive, had not been reappointed for several years, and it was there. I assume it was probably appointed in the first place because of seeking HUD funding. I don't know that, but that's just what I thought. So one of the first things I asked was that we would reappoint that commission and make it active and functioning again. And it's been doing that. It's had a few down times, but at the same time, it's been trying to get some things done. Also, one of my first pleasures as mayor last year in my first month, I spoke to a group of third graders in an after-school program at one of our elementary schools sponsored by the YMCA here. And I asked, after I'd finished speaking, I asked the children, I said, now, what questions do you have? And one of the particular things that I covered was perspective. I talked about perspective. And I asked, what is perspective? And one of the children raised his hand and he said, perspective is how it looks from where you sit. Well, I said, hallelujah. That was a third grader. But let me say something from where I sit. I used to serve on Richmond's Human Rights Commission, but of course now serving as mayor, I appoint that commission. Our commission has chosen to focus here lately, and I heard someone else mention this, I think it was Alice, but to focus on such things as the issue of homelessness. And in fact, actively doing so, our city has an old National Guard armory, which was used for several years by our Parks and Recreation Department, which now has a new office. We are looking at, the city of Richmond is looking at repurposing that old building. And it just so happens that when our Human Rights Commission got wind of that, they said, why can't we also use that place if we can get it? Anybody got an extra $1 million out there to help us with refurbing? But why can't we also use that place as a central location for folks who are looking for any kind of assistance in our community, whether it's a complaint or concern, not necessarily a complaint always, about housing, or whether they need food or any kinds of services that are needed. So that's what we're looking at doing. And grateful for the work, certainly, of our city manager, who has put a lot of energy and effort into that. We did receive recently, and again, this has been our focus, a grant for about $52,000 to help us through the winter, through the bad weather, working with one of our local hotels, motels, in housing folks who are homeless, folks who are out in the weather. And our Human Rights Commission, again, has been taking a lead in that, joining with another coalition in our community to provide that kind of service. Back in the summer when we had rallies and protests, our Human Rights Commission used that as an opportunity to educate. They disseminated materials that were very much a part of the actual event itself, very present, and used it as an opportunity, as I say, not only to educate, but to disseminate materials so that folks would know what the commission does and how to contact them, not just for complaints, but also, again, for education. And then last year, our commission gave scholarships to encourage some of our young people in our community to move forward with their education. I have charged, like the child said, perspective is how it looks from where you sit. Therefore, I've charged our commission to find ways to educate even more our community regarding rights, regarding how to help other folks in achieving the things that we all want to achieve, and certainly with the support, even financial support of the city itself. The commission operates somewhat independently of the city so that there is not the appearance that whatever decisions they would make or complaints they would receive would be also scrutinized by city government. They operate independently in that sense, but we do provide them with some financial assistance. Let's see, one other thing. There's a coalition, as I said, in our community that has been working with our Human Rights Commission in order to achieve also what we're trying to do at that repurposed, hopefully, that repurposed National Guard Armory. Again, thank you very much to all of you for what you do. Juan Pena, John C.K. Fisher held our hands again when we needed some help. And I've always committed that I will do what I can as mayor, but also encouraging the city of Richmond to support the work of the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. Thank you very much. God bless you and be safe.
Thank you. So those of you who spoke, you might think that you're out of the woods, but you're not quite yet. For a few minutes, we wanted to open the floor up for our commissioners to ask some questions of our partners. And then when we've concluded that, we'll allow you all to ask questions of the commissioners or any of us. So we'll start with the commissioners. Do any of you have any questions you wanted to pose to the partners?
I was glad to hear Mayor Blight, I hope I'm saying that right, his comments as it relates to dealing with the homeless in your community. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit more as to how you see our agency maybe being able to expand on that?
You know, I heard someone from the Kentucky Housing Commission, and I'm sorry I don't recall, but there was discussion. One of the things our city has done, and this we consider to be a human right that I mean, folks are homeless for so many different reasons.
Right.
We cannot paint with a broad brush because often we'll hear, well, they must have drug problems. No, not necessarily. There are lots of reasons. And I remember that some years ago, we were in a campaign because we actually have here a shelter for homeless families. And I remember in our work in that shelter, it was mentioned that every one of us, of course, is one paycheck away from being homeless. So we're trying to focus on having at least some kind of accommodation as a right, and to do what we can do in order to provide that. Now, the city, as I said, sought a grant, and we received it, $52,000 to help through the winter, the bad weather, with one of our local motels. We had the motels to bid if they wanted to help provide the service. So the city assisted in that way. We will administer the grant and siphon it through a local coalition called Room in the Inn. Our community has many, and let me back up just a second. September 30th of last year, and I'll be quick. September 30th of last year, I called for a community town hall meeting of everyone, every individual, every church, every group, every agency that had any interest at all in looking at our homeless situation, the homelessness issue. And we chose not to call it a problem. We called it an issue. And you would be amazed to have seen the number of folks who came to that gathering. What we wanted to do was to make sure, because there were so many efforts already underway, make sure that the right hand knew what the left hand was doing. Sure. Because there were so many things being done, and folks say, oh, I didn't know we had a shelter there. I didn't know we were feeding every day of the week. I didn't know. So we tried to, first of all, get everybody on the same page. The city cannot do it all, but we can assist, and we can, as we did that night, facilitate the efforts of so many others and then see where there are some missing pieces. And it was amazing how folks volunteered. They volunteered to help fill in some of those missing pieces. Let me stop here. I don't want to take too much time, but that's how we approached it.
Thank you.
Just give me a holler if you want to talk about it further.
Is R1, that's the R1, R1.
So do any other commissioners have any questions?
The other thing that was asked in the chat was, we've been under the assumption that the foreign national works for the religious organization, even when they are assigned to a religious guide. Their salaries are set to the religious organization, and they are subject to obedience to the religious organization.
No questions?
So
in that event, then we will flip
that
it.
assumption would,
Anyone who has a question.
that would be the general
Mr. Sullivan,
You,
not really a question, but just basically a few comments. You know, I'm really appreciative of what these agencies are doing across the Commonwealth, and especially over in Western Kentucky. I'm appreciative of how they are doing the work that has been assigned to them to do. You know, I would love to see, I think it's very important for us to really spotlight our agencies more across the state. You know, I know this may come under Mary Ann a little bit, but what I would really love to see is for us to have a media blitz day that would comprise the whole Commonwealth, wherever we have agencies at, because I think a lot of people still don't realize the importance of the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, the importance of being able to use it in a way that is beneficial to them and to others. I think it's very important for us to try to do that and to encourage people to, especially in this day and time. Dr. King spoke about the fierce urgency of now. If it ever was a time, I think that we need to be in the forefront of civil rights and human rights, it's today. So, you know, I'm encouraging us to maybe try to get together and do that, and to spotlight more of what we're doing, and let medias in our area possibly put together stories or articles about the commissions in their areas to continue this good work. So I hope we would consider doing that.
I think that's a great thought, and that's something that's definitely in the works, and that we hope to continue and include all of you on as we map that out. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Any other commissioners' comments or questions for the group?
Well, one other thing I do want to say, Reverend Dr. Blythe, who is over in Richmond, a good friend of mine, I want to tell him how proud I am of him because of his work down through the years with human rights and the commission as well, and how proud I am of those that are serving in Bowling Green, Henderson, Hopkinsville, Owensboro, those areas here in Western Kentucky that I'm affiliated with, know a lot about. It's really good to see their dedication to it. That means so much too. So I'm appreciative of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas.
Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask of us, the commissioners, really anyone else on the call? We'll take a few minutes, and if you have a question, you can drop it in the chat, and then we can call on you to pose that question. And we'll wait a second to give people time to type in if they had any questions or comments. Okay. Oh, there we go. Just a second. So as people, if you have any questions, I did want to call on a couple people who we may not have gotten to in the initial run through. First, I want to talk to, if you're on, Mr. Ray, are you still on it? If you wanted to share some of what the work that's going on in your area.
I'm traveling, so you may not be able to hear me very well. Can you hear me okay?
You can.
All right. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Just really sharing the work that you're doing and what you're seeing right now, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, just an update.
Okay. Well, of course, the NAACP, we're always looking after people's civil rights, but here in Kentucky recently, we've been working hard on voter access. We want to support early voting. It's becoming part of the law. And the other thing that we really want to work on this legislative session is the criminal justice system and bail reform. Disproportionately, we always seem to be the ones left in jail when things are going on. So that's another issue that we really want to work. And education this time around, we want to take another look at not lowering the standards, but so that they can close the achievement gap, but enforcing the standard and providing the resources that will give students equal opportunity versus lowering the standard to just say we've closed the gap. Those are the main 3 things we're going to take a look at. And then we're also starting a project with the Healthy Foundation for Kentucky. We want to see if we can change the medical outcomes for our community by getting or creating access to medical treatment as well as mental health. And hopefully we can eliminate some food deserts around the country or around the counties across the state, which also will help the long-term health benefits. So we've got a lot of things going on as far as human rights go. I think those are all human rights, access to health care, access to equal education, and a criminal justice system that treats us all fairly. So that's kind of what we're into right now, hoping to accomplish over the next legislative session, at least some of those things. Over.
Thank you. So one question that we did get was around sending out contact information for the speakers today. And we will ask the speakers, if you want to drop your contact information in the chat, that works. But we can also see with the people who spoke today, if we can get permission to share their information, we can send out to people on the call some of the information of people who spoke today. It might be easier if some of you want to share, feel free to just drop it in the chat for everyone to grab. One question was around starting more commissions throughout the state. And I talked earlier about our ability to help with enabling local commissions. And that's something that is a goal of ours here. I know that at least personally, when I started, one of my goals was to start at least one local commission each year. Really pushing on one coming here soon. So we will work on that. But as far as getting that started, please reach out to us about your area, and then we can talk through how that process can work and getting that ground game together on starting a local commission and using some of that work to make these a little bit more expansive in our state, because as it was mentioned earlier, we do need more awareness throughout our state that we exist. That will include a media push, social media push, and really establishing some more roots in other locations, even if it's sharing an office space somewhere in a city building, but there are people that are devoted to this work. Being in other areas will be vital to moving forward our own mission. So I say all of that to say anyone who is interested in doing that, reach out to us. You can email me, Marianne, Brittany Cook, I'll drop emails in here, but we do want to expand our reach and expand access to rights for people in our state. And so that's something that we definitely want to look into. Any other questions?
I do have a question, and I don't know if this is open to the general audience. So is it okay, Terrence, to ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. My name is Leo Calderon, and I am my full-time job is the Director of Latino Programs and Services at NKU, Northern Kentucky University. That office was established in the spring of 2001 with 57 self-reported Latino students, undocumented permanent residents, and US born. Now we have over 600 students. In addition to that, just like Bonnie mentioned, wonderful, we just love Bonnie Meyer. A couple of years ago, we established Esperanza, Latino Center of Northern Kentucky, to better serve that community, the growing community. Right across Esperanza, the school has a 40% of the students are Latinos, mainly Guatemalans. And I guess I've been part of higher education for the last 35 years. My concern is this. I see the lack of minority representation, okay? I see the lack across the state and around the country, the lack of just underrepresented groups to be on the board of regents, you name it. So I guess my question to the commission is this: what can the commission do to work with the Council on Post-Secondary Education to ensure that we have somewhat of a representation at schools? You look at the number of African Americans in higher education, tenure track, staff, it's almost non-existent. And why is that? According to some statistics, Bonnie, 25% of the students who are coming in are LGBTQ. So where's also the representation of the LGBT community? I think if we were going to want to change things, we're going to start with policy. So I guess my question is this: for those public institutions, how are we going to make them accountable to ensure that we have a diverse group of individuals in those organizations? Because ultimately, if we don't have good policies, good state policies, that's going to have a negative effect. But these are some of the bigger questions that I have. And come next year, folks, to be honest with you, come next year, it's going to be worse. You look at the education gap of underrepresented students in Kentucky. Kentucky, Latino kids, 4 or 5 years ago, we had almost 5%. Now it's up to 8%. So that number is growing. As a board member of the Preacher Committee, we are addressing that issues. We are concerned about the inequities. At any rate, so these are big questions that we need to go and figure it out together. But again, it's got to start with asking some critical questions as it affects to just public institutions. How are we, because we're paying money into it. My question is so how are we being represented? Thank you.
So first, thank you for that question. That's a really great question. I wanted to start by saying, and I'll start, and then Mary Ann, if you want to jump in, but I'll start by saying that part of my position here is I do get to sit on that committee with the Council on Post-Secondary Education. And I think that's one starting point, but not saying that I can do a lot alone. But I do think your question, and you're right, it is a large, there are some larger questions in this. I think that the first step in that is having a conversation with people outside of that to develop a plan for what we want to bring to the Council on Post-Secondary Education, as well as state policymakers to address that issue. And so I would love to talk with you about some of your thoughts, and we could then think of who else to reach out to and come up with a game plan with a collective group, because we're stronger in numbers, and put inclusivity on the table and part of the conversation. And so I would love to talk to you and anyone else on this call who wants to start that conversation, and then we can put a plan together and move forward. Mary Ann?
I agree with you. You basically said what I would have said. And there, is a session starting soon. We need to be present. We need to have an agenda. Mr. Sullivan is already on top of speaking with change makers, with legislators. So if we go in with an agenda, we meet, prior to that, as Terrence is working with Council on Post-Secondary Education. We just need to come prepared, but we do need to start that discussion, and we probably need to start it really, really soon. Make sure that we have all the players in place, and make sure that we do have a solid, sustainable agenda when we go in. But I wouldn't have added anything else to what you said, Terrence.
Thank you, Mary Ann. So I'll drop my email in the chat, and I will again, but if you want to start that conversation, and anyone else who wants to be a part of that, please reach out and we can start that and move that forward. There was a question about having a Latinx commissioner, and I was just curious if you meant on our board of commissioners or the commissioner on the Council for Post-Secondary Education. So just a little clarity on that question.
My question is to have a commissioner in the Civil Rights Commission, because we don't have representation in this body.
So no, I think representation on any body is very important. And Chair Randolph, did you want to speak to that question?
Yes. Am I muted? Okay. First, all of the appointments to this Board of Commissioners is made by the governor's office. So you would simply contact the Boards and Commissions office in Frankfort and complete an application indicating that you would be interested in being considered for an appointment with them, but that we do not have the power to do that. Also, I wanted to clarify something, Mr. Sullivan, just for clarification, as it relates to establishing commissions throughout the state. We may have like a satellite office as we do in Covington, but this commission does not establish local commissions. We support those efforts, but you must have individuals or local governments to take the bull by the horn in doing that. So I didn't want this meeting to conclude with everyone thinking that we had the power to go out and establish local commissions, because we don't. That's all I had.
Thank you. So any other questions on really anything else that you heard, or any thoughts that you have on? So Mary Ann, there's a question on how many local commissions currently exist. And just as a clarification point for local commissions, we, by asking to establish local commissions, We don't start them per se, but we do help in facilitating getting those on the ground by working with the local officials who would be establishing that location. But
I'll speak to that real quickly. What we do is currently we have 26 commissions, local commissions on the books. What that means is that city and or county governments have established an ordinance which creates a local commission, and they have put some funding toward that effort in some way. Of those 26, we have 23 that are actually active. The inactive ones have become inactive for various reasons. Someone has retired, there's just not enough interest in the area, or the city budget has shrunk and there's not enough funding to assist them in the work that they want to do. But we currently have 23 active, and yes, they are listed, or last time I looked, they were all listed on our website, www.kchr.ky.gov, as well as contact information. So if a city or a county or your community feels the need to establish a human rights commission, what we have done in the past is come down and have some meetings with the folks that want to establish, meet with mayor, meet with city administrators, talk about the, basically do a needs assessment there in the community. We have a guidebook for communities that will walk you step by step through establishing a local commission. And then our role is to offer the technical assistance. Beyond that, some folks seem to think that there's an accountability factor there built into us as a commission, but there is not. What the law says is that your county and or your city may establish, but the accountability factors lie with that city government or that county government that established the ordinance to create the commission. Okay. However, that doesn't mean that we aren't involved. As Charles told you earlier, if necessary, we can be involved on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. It just depends on your need, because we are there for that purpose. Okay. I hope that answers quick questions. I think I saw a comment that someone could not find the local commission.
Yeah, I was going to speak to that, Mary Ann. So
Okay.
the website recently changed, and we're working with the state digital team on getting everything ported over. So right now that local list has not been ported over from the old site yet. But this month they will be added. Most of the things should finish porting over this month, with some of the changes with COVID and some of the digital team workers working remotely. It's been a little bit of a lag in getting some of that updated, but that's in progress. We actually had conversations with them this morning on some other information that needs to be ported over. We are very close to time, 1 minute left. But on behalf of us here at the Commission, I wanted to thank you all for taking time out of your day, the International Day of Human Rights, to spend time talking with us and learning. We know that in these times, we must all lean on each other to ensure the world is safe for us and welcoming and an inviting space. And so we know that we can't do any of this alone on our own, but together we'll go a long way. So we just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to working with you all in the future. Again, for some of your questions, please reach out to us and we will be in contact as soon as possible. So thank you all and have a good weekend.